So far, we interacted with Ganache and with a private node, either through Ganache's UI or through a command line interface. Later on, we will demonstrate how to combine smart contracts and a web interface into a decentralized application, or dApp, that people will be able to use through a special kind of web browser called a dApp browser. To put it simply, a dApp browser is a web browser connected to an Ethereum node that can manage a set of keys. There are not a lot of such dApp browsers on the market yet. The most common options are Mist, that is developed by the Ethereum Foundation, and which is more of a Geth node with a web rendering engine on top, and MetaMask, which works as a browser extension inside of Chrome or Firefox, and adds an Ethereum connection to Chrome through a remote Ethereum node called Infura. Both Mist and MetaMask are still early beta software and very unstable and buggy at times. But MetaMask clearly has the most practical features for dApp developers for now. So in this course, we'll use MetaMask as our dApp browser. Just a word of warning, again, it still has a lot of bugs and we had to find some workarounds until those bugs are fixed. But whenever necessary, we'll explain those workarounds. Another note, in this course, we are going to show you how to install MetaMask on a Mac. But if you are using Chrome or Firefox on Linux or on Windows, the procedure should be exactly the same, with a small difference on Linux that I'll show you later. MetaMask exists both as a Firefox add-on and as a Chrome extension, but in this course we'll use the Chrome extension because Chrome is the most popular browser these days. To install the Chrome extension, we have to go to the MetaMask website on metamask.io. The link will be in the resources of this lecture. And then click this Get Chrome extension button here. You can add the extension to your browser. Add extension. And that's it. By the way, you can watch this video that introduces how MetaMask works. And now the MetaMask extension is available here with this Fox icon. So the first thing we need to do is to initialize the vault. So MetaMask uses the vault concept to contain the keys that correspond to your accounts. So here we need to initialize the vault, and to do that we have to accept the privacy notice first, accept, and then accept the terms of use as well, but we can only accept the terms of use when we have scrolled down to the bottom. And we accept. Now again, MetaMask uses a software vault to store your private keys inside the browser extension and keep them safe, while handling the signature of your transactions before they are sent to the node you are connecting to. It can also connect to public networks, mainnets, testnets, and so on, as well as private networks running on your own machine through their RPC API. This vault is protected with a global password that is not stored anywhere online. So you need to keep your password very safe and also store a list of 12 words called a seed phrase that you can use to recover your vault if you forgot your password. Now, to initialize the MetaMask vault, there are basically two possibilities. You can create a new MetaMask vault from scratch and it will create a random seed phrase, or you can restore a vault from an existing seed phrase. Whatever the option you choose, you can always import accounts created somewhere else using their private key on top of those created inside MetaMask. We are going to use Ganache a lot for development in this course, and Ganache generates 10 accounts by default. And those accounts will always be identical if you keep the default settings. Those accounts are generated based on the following seed phrase: candy, maple, cake, sugar, pudding, cream, honey, rich, smooth, crumble, sweet treat. Now, what is very important is that you do not, I repeat, you do not under any circumstance use this seed phrase in the import existing then functionality in MetaMask. It will work, but then the private keys of all the accounts you create in this vault are exposed because anyone can regenerate the exact same accounts and private keys based on this seed phrase that anybody can find. Okay, it's the default one in Ganache. Now, unfortunately, MetaMask doesn't keep isolated vaults for each network, so the best option here is to use the Create button in this screen in order to create a random vault with a random seed. And then we will import the Ganache accounts based on their private keys. Also, once we have them imported, we will clearly mark them not to use them on the mainnet. Now, if you already have generated a MetaMask vault before, you can keep it. You can skip the vault creation step and import Ganache accounts in it afterwards. But here we'll show you how to create your vault from scratch. So here, what you can do is type your very secured password twice, and then hit create. Then it shows you the seed phrase that it generated randomly. And this seed phrase is very important because that's the one that you can use then to regenerate the accounts that have been created inside of MetaMask. And if you use that vault to store some real Ether, you have to keep this phrase very secure. Now, of course, I'm not showing this phrase here because then you would be able to recreate the same account as me and empty them of their Ether afterwards. So make sure you copy that phrase somewhere safe, and then you can click the I've copied it somewhere safe button. Just a tip, what I generally do is store this seed phrase inside my password manager. I'm using 1Password, but maybe you're using LastPass or something like that. These are tools where you can store information in encrypted fashion, so that's a good way to do it. So at this stage, MetaMask will create a first account in my vault, and then we can import the 10 accounts that are generated by Ganache. To do that, we need the private key of each account, and Ganache makes it available through the key button at the end of each account's line in the Accounts tab. So now let's start Ganache. And here we can see the 10 accounts that have been generated. So let's click the button at the end of the first line for the first account. And then we copy this value. This is the private key. Okay. Then we go back to Chrome. We open the MetaMask extension. And then we will switch network. So here you have a button where you can switch network, and here you have a button where you can switch accounts. So here we switch to the network, and if you remember, our Ganache network is running on port 7545, which is not a network option here yet. We can use the custom RPC, type http://localhost 7545, and hit save. Then I go back with the left arrow here, and now I'm connected to my private network. This will be useful in a moment. Now that I'm on the private network, I can use the import command that is in the account menu here with this little guy here. So I click this, and I use the import account menu item. There I can choose between two types of import, either private key or JSON file. JSON file will be useful later when we import accounts from the private node. Here we'll use the private key one. And there we can paste the value that we copied from Ganache. And we hit import. And as you can see, the balance of this account is 100 Ether. What we can do here is rename the e-account right away into Ganache 1 because it's the first account on Ganache. And this will also serve as a warning that this is an account generated in Ganache and we should not use this account on the mainnet. And we save. And then we will repeat this process for the other 9 accounts. So going back to Ganache, account number 2, we copy the private key, go back to Chrome, import account, we paste the private key, we import, and we rename the account to Ganache 2. And that's it. At this point, we imported all the 10 accounts generated by Ganache, and we can see their balance in MetaMask. If at any point during this process you have a problem seeing your network, seeing the right balance, or if you have a spinning wheel that doesn't stop, know that the MetaMask extension is very fragile when it comes to synchronization and switching between networks. One thing that can sometimes solve a lot of issue is to try and switch to the mainnet and then back to your own private network. And this will put everything back in sync, and you should see the right thing. If that doesn't work, another trick is to go to Chrome ://extensions and to disable, not remove, disable and re-enable the extension. Then you have to unlock the vault again. And normally it should have everything in sync. So if I switch to account Ganache 1, for example, I can see now the right balance. If after all that you still can't see your accounts, your best bet is to contact the MetaMask team directly via their Slack channel. It's the best option we've found so far. So you can register to their Slack by going to this URL, and then you can ask the question directly. But first, do all the steps that we just described. Make sure that Ganache is properly running, that it's on the right ports, that you are connecting to the right network, and that you tried the switching to the main network and disabling the extension tricks before. So as we showed, you can rename accounts by hovering over the name and then clicking edit. Unfortunately, you cannot remove an account for now in MetaMask, so you will have long lists of accounts in the switch account list. But for each account, you can also use this contextual menu to view the account on Etherscan. By the way, this is only available for accounts on the mainnet or on public test chains. You can also show a QR code that encodes the address of the account. You can also copy the address of the account to clipboard and export the private key. Now that we've imported all the accounts from Ganache, let's do the same with the accounts that we created in the private node. So the first thing we'll do is start our private node. So we can start it at the same time as Ganache. It doesn't matter because they run on different ports. But still, we'll just quit Ganache and then start a terminal. Then you go to the chainskills/private directory in your user home directory, whatever the system you're using. And you can run start node.sh. And of course, on Windows, it's not .sh, it's start node.cmd. So again, always check for the information where the node is started and where it opens the various endpoints. So here we can see that the HTTP endpoint is successfully opened on port 8545 and mining has started. So now we can go back to Chrome and we can switch to another network. It will be another private network, and this will be the localhost 8545 one. That's already in the menu here. So you can click that. And here you see that it's showing us the balance of this address on the private node, which is 0. And here, what we'll need to do is to import the private keys for these accounts, but we need to import them in the right order. So to do that, we will go back to the terminal again, open a new terminal tab. And here, assuming that our IPC endpoint was opened in the right place, which is IPC endpoint opened in library/ethereum/get.ipc. So that's a default location for macOS. Of course, it's different for Linux, and for Windows, you don't care. And there you should be able to run geth attach, and it will attach to the IPC endpoint. And that is correct. It's connecting to the chain skills private. If you left Ganache running, you might have a different version here. So yeah, just quit Ganache and run only your private node to do that. So here, as we did before, we can list the accounts in order, and we can see that this is the index 0, index 1, index 2. That will be useful information now. So let's import the Coinbase account, the first one, into MetaMask. So that's the account that starts with 1CF0. So we go back to the browser and we open the extension. Here we will use the import account functionality again. And instead of private key, we'll select the JSON file. Then we can click the choose file button to go and look for this file on our machine. On macOS, it will be under my user directory inside of chain skills, private, key store, and here we have the 3 files, one for each key. And if you remember, the Coinbase account is 1CF0, so that's this one here. This corresponds to the first account that we want to import. So you just double click that to select that file, and you enter the password, which is pass1234. And you import. And it takes a few seconds. You just have to wait for it to do the import. By the way, if you're on Linux, you might have an issue here. Just a second, I will explain. Here, I can rename this to private 1 to indicate that it's the first account on the private network. So let's import the other 2 files now. So import account, JSON file. Sorry, I forgot to look at. So that's the 46F8 account. So again, I import the second account, JSON file, choose the file, and that's the 46F8. That's the second one. Type the password for this account, 1234. Sorry, pass1234. And then import. Again, takes a few seconds. And here we can see the 10 ethers that we transferred from the Coinbase account in the previous lecture. So here I will rename this account to private 2 and do the same for account number 3. And I'll rename it to private 3. So when you try to import those accounts from on Linux, for example, you might have an issue because the dialog here to import the account will just disappear on you when you select the file. Okay, if that happens, that is a known issue with MetaMask on Linux, and actually on Firefox also on some other systems, and it's documented in the MetaMask FAQ. So if you go to github.com/metamask/FAQ, the link will be in the resources of this lecture. You can see at the bottom of the page here the solution to that problem. So for Google Chrome, you need to type this entire address here, chrome-extension : and then this very weird URL. You can type that in the address bar, hit enter, and then what it does is open the Chrome dialog, but in a full tab, so that it doesn't disappear when then you use this import account feature. And then it should work. Okay, and you can do the same trick with the other URL, with the other URL here with Moz extension. And that should solve the issue you might have on Linux or on Firefox. Now let's just check balances. If I'm still on the private network, okay, I check private 1. I can see the balance corresponding to the Coinbase accounts, always increasing. Private 2 has 10 ether, and private 3 has 10 ethers as well. So now we should have the 10 accounts that we imported from Ganache and the 3 accounts that we imported from our private Geth node. And also we should have the account 1 here that was created with the vault in MetaMask directly. And now, of course, if you switch to another network, let's take, for example, our Coinbase account, our private 1 account. And with that same account selected, we switch to the main Ethereum network. Our balance becomes 0. Sorry, you cannot use your fake Ether on the real network. And that's a good thing. And the same way, you cannot use your real Ether on a private network either. Don't forget that if you want to export, let's say, the account that was generated by MetaMask, you can always use this contextual menu and export the private key and keep that in a safe place so that you can re-import it later on. Again, if you need some help with MetaMask, we can certainly help in the Q&A section of this course. But generally, the best option is to go to the MetaMask Slack. And again, the link to the MetaMask Slack will be in the resources of this course and of this lecture, and it appears on screen now. So don't forget to always back up the private key of your accounts on the mainnet, especially after you start storing real Ether in them, because your private key is all you have and all you need to access your cryptocurrency wallet. Now it's time to learn about smart contracts and how to create them. So in the next lecture, we will have an introduction to Solidity and to the tools that you can use to compile it.